Greetings, Spartans, once again. Today is April 2nd, 2025. According to our current administration, this is Liberation Day. Woohoo! Yay! What are we getting liberated from? I don't know. Honestly. I mean, we used to have international friends and allies. So we're getting rid of that. And we used to have some sort of modicum of normal prices that people had kind of been able to tolerate for some time, but we're going to make sure those prices go up even more. So we're going to be liberated from that. And, respect from the rest of the world for trying to help causes and humanitarian causes and health and wellness and supporting democracy around the world. Well, that stuff's kind of hard to do, and honestly, it's kind of exhausting, so we're not going to do that anymore. So I guess we're liberated from that too. Yeah, you can tell I'm not too excited about all that. So a few things have been going on in case you might have missed it. Just to start out with, a Senator, Cory Booker of New Jersey, recently, and I say recently as in just yesterday, broke the record for the longest filibuster on the Senate floor in history. He stood on the floor of the Senate for 25 hours. The man didn't go to the bathroom. He didn't eat or drink anything. He stood there for 25 hours talking about all the horrible things that this administration is doing to the country. Everything from trying to take money away from our Social Security system, Medicare, Medicaid, firing tens of thousands of people in the federal workforce, dismantling entire agencies in the government, even though they have no actual legal authority to do it. They're still doing it. About how they want to give more tax breaks to the wealthy, and how they're just destroying people's lives and just making life in America harder and harder by the day. They're not doing one thing to help with the cost of groceries or eggs or anything like that. I heard someone say the other day that, egg prices were starting to come down some. And I said, oh, really? What were they? Well, it was $5 a dozen. Really? That's coming down now? $5 a dozen? I remember, I know people have some problems with memory, but it was just like, what, 5 months ago, 4 months ago, people were freaking out because they said a dozen eggs were costing $4 for a dozen of eggs. Now it's $5 a dozen, but that's good. That's actually coming down, so we're good with that now. Unbelievable. Anyway, the prior record for a filibuster on the Senate floor was done by Strom Thurmond, who was on the Senate floor for about 24 hours. Senator Booker was on there for over 25 hours. And he was opposing legislation that would help increase the strength of civil rights in the country back in the late 50s. He would have been appalled at a black guy like Senator Booker even being on the Senate floor, let alone doing a longer filibuster than him. I'm sure there's a lot of people in the current administration that probably have similar ideas to old Senator Strom there. back in the 50s. So, take that for what's worth. Think about that, chew on that. The next thing I want to talk about was, at the same time, while Mr. Booker, or Senator Booker, was giving the speech, the current administration was announcing even more cuts to health research and health services by the federal government. Up to about 10,000 people from the National Health Service and from the CDC were let go and fired. These included sometimes entire departments, like the Department for Healthy Aging. What'd they do? They did Alzheimer's research. Gutted it. Let them all go. Because Alzheimer's apparently, we don't care much about it anymore. They also got rid of a bunch of people working on bird flu. Again, they got rid of a bunch of people who worked on drug evaluations and treatment evaluations, and the people that would log and that would keep track of all the possible side effects of different medications. Yeah, that most of them were let go too. The people that regulate the tobacco industry, because we've finally come to a place where we're sure that the tobacco industry is okay to take care of itself. We don't need to give them any oversight anymore. Yeah. And then they also cut a bunch more VA jobs because, we haven't had enough veterans lose their jobs recently. We really need to up that number some. On a better note, Elon Musk lost his Supreme Court race in Wisconsin. His personal pick, the Republican pick for that seat, he poured about $20 million of his own money into the campaign. In total, the campaign was about $100 million from both sides altogether spent on this one Supreme Court state Supreme Court race. One race in Wisconsin. $100 million, a fifth of which was just Elon Musk. Now, thankfully, his candidate lost big, actually, by Wisconsin standards. Now, the question I want to know is, let's see, what was the total political campaign spending for, let's see, the 2008 presidential race. Let's see what we come up with. Spending by the numbers. This presidential. So in 2008, all the presidential candidates spent about almost $2 billion. $1,770,000. $770 million, sorry. That was in 2008. What about 2000? $2,000 was even a lot less. That's a pretty good comparison. Look at that. Just over $600 million on the presidential race of 2000. And they spent $100 million on one Supreme Court seat in Wisconsin. About 2024. It's a lot of money, people. That's a lot of money. Almost $3 billion. When you start thinking about those numbers, you know, it would be one thing if all this was being donated, you know, small dollar amounts, grassroots money from people all across the country. That would be one thing. But when you have people who can just throw down 20 million here, a couple $100 million there, one person, or even 5 or 10 people who can do that, you start to see the outsized influence they're going to have. They're going to have influence anyway because they have all this money. But when they can just so flagrantly and blatantly just throw it out there, I mean, that's crazy. That's a problem. That's not a sign. Where is it at? That's not a sign of a healthy democracy. That's a symptom of an illness. Because if you have people who can just throw that money around like that, people like you and me, what do we matter? Beyond getting our votes, once they have it, who cares? But thankfully, the Muskrat lost. His candidate of choice lost, which is most likely a good thing for everybody. Moving on. During the State of the Union address, or whatever you want to call it, apparently it wasn't officially a State of the Union address, but you know, that's what it was. Remember the kid who was made an honorary Secret Service member, the one that had been suffering with brain cancer? You know, that's an awful thing, obviously. You know, I mean, it's an awful thing for anybody, but especially for a kid to have to go through junk like that. A lot of people got onto Democrats and some other people who didn't immediately stand to applaud this and celebrate that he was made an honorary Secret Service agent, right? And I get that. I mean, I get the immediate, you know, tug at the heartstrings, visceral response. You know, here's a kid. He's been fighting cancer and brain cancer of all things, and he wanted to be a Secret Service agent, and so they did an honorary sort of little ceremony right there where everybody could see it. And you know, I mean, your initial reaction is to stand up and applaud for the kid, because I mean, you know, obviously, you know, the kid's been through a lot, you know. I'm not going to sit here and say that maybe I wouldn't have stood for the kid either. I will say I understand and I appreciate the side of the people who didn't, because in my mind, the other side of that coin is that Timu Hitler is just propping this kid up to make himself look good, to be like, look what I'm doing. This kid had cancer. He wanted to be a Secret Service agent. I'm going to honor him. Look at me. Look at how great I am. How selfless I am to honor this child. Yes, yes. Applaud me for my greatness and my selflessness. Well, everybody had their opinions about that, and that's what that was. But an update on that. As part of all these health service cuts that have been going on recently, guess whose doctors got purged from the government? That kid. His doctors. The federal funding that was going into his cancer research, well, that got cut too. Think about that for a minute. On the one hand, Trump is over here saying, look at me. I'm doing this for this kid. It's amazing, right? It's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's the most amazing thing you've ever seen. And then with the other hand, he's slowly taking the money away from this kid's treatment. Until finally he just fires the doctors, takes all the money, and now no one thinks about the kid anymore because the kid's forgot about. He's gone. He was the victim of a 24-hour news cycle that ended 3 months ago. So, yeah. On the one hand, celebrate me for how great I am for honoring this kid. On the other hand, this kid's fought cancer long enough. It's probably time for him to just die. He suffered long enough, right? We're just going to let him die now. Bye-bye. That's how I see it. It's awful. It's beyond awful. I don't feel like I have the proper words for it right now. Speaking of awful things, though, some of you may have heard about all these college students that have been rounded up recently by ICE as part of supposedly, let's see, getting rid of people in the country who are against the current administration or whatever crap they like to try to spin. Here we go. Well, a lot of them, as far as I can tell, none of them actually have a real criminal record of any kind. They're just being targeted for speech. They are students who are in America on foreign visas or with green cards or whatever student specific stuff is. And because they are saying something that the Trump administration doesn't seem to like, they're just going to detain them and deport them. And if they're lucky, they'll get to go home to their home countries. If they're not, they might end up in fucking El Salvador. Student in Minnesota named Mankato was detained at an off-campus residence on March 28th. No reason was given for the student's arrest. Just an international student. Rumessa Ozturk in Massachusetts had a valid F1 visa for her PhD studies at Tufts University in Boston, where she was detained. Oh yeah, this was the one. This was the one that was detained on the street. Oh my God, it was awful. I mean, just out of nowhere. She was just walking down the street. All of a sudden, a bunch of people just show up wearing masks. No one knows who they are. And they just shove her in a car and she's gone. Apparently because of some paper that she had co-authored that went into a university student paper like a year and a half ago that said something about, condemning some administration or somebody for the treatment of I think it was the Palestinians and what's happening in Gaza. Yeah, calling it genocide, and calling for the university to make some kind of statement about that. Which it is. I mean, I've seen the numbers. I've seen the pictures. And I remember what happened on October 7th. Hell, that's my birthday. I remember. Or was it October 6th? Well, now I am questioning myself. Yes, October 7th. Okay. Yeah, I remember my birthday. And it was horrific. Of course it was a horrific attack. Of course they had to respond and do something. They did not have to level Gaza to the ground. A population that was half people under the age of like 20 or 21. Half of them are kids. And the death toll and the destruction has been indiscriminate. The humanitarian crisis, because they wouldn't let in trucks at one point. They didn't want to let in. They turned off the food and electricity. At another point, I mean, I've been married long enough to know that a lot of times it's not the things I do that get me in trouble. It's how I deal with it, or how I try to explain it after the fact. Instead of just coming out and saying what I did and saying I'm sorry, trying to make excuses for it, or trying to spin it, or getting caught up in a lie or some other crap. It's you can support the people of Israel and yet criticize the administration and government of Israel. Just like I can support and I can feel epic sorrow for the people of Russia and the lives they have to live under and the rules they have to live under, that regime, and yet completely despise and criticize the Putin government. The two things are not necessarily the same. Just like with America these days. I can feel bad and feel support for the majority of the American people, and yet totally despise Orange Mussolini's current regime. The world is not differentiated in black and white, as much as we like to think it might be, because it's easier that way. It's actually just many, many shades of gray. There are a few things that are more black and white than others, though. And having people being taken off the street by people in masks and thrown into cars and taken 2,000 miles away to a detention camp in Louisiana because of a co-authored editorial piece you put in a student newspaper 2 years ago. I think that's one of them. But it's not just them. Here's someone else. I hadn't even heard about this one. Yun So Shung, who, let's see here, what was her deal? At 7 years old, she immigrated to the U.S. with her family from South Korea, became a lawful permanent resident. She was a valedictorian in her high school, enrolled in 2022 at Columbia University, where she studied English and gender studies. And she attended a sit-in at Barnard College protesting the expulsion of students who had participated in pro-Palestinian activism on March 5th. When an apparent white supremacist bomb threat was called, later determined to be a hoax, police officers instructed protesters to exit the building. She was caught in the rush to exit and was arrested, charged with obstruction of governmental administration, given a desk appearance ticket, and released. She was suspended from Colombia as a result of the arrest on March 7th. On March 9th, ICE agents searched her parents' home in an attempt to find her. Agents also obtained a warrant against harboring non-citizens to search her Colombia dormitory. Wow. All because she was in a sit-in. I mean, talk about an assault on free speech. I mean, these people, they talk about free speech so much. We need to live in a place where we can have an open dialogue and communication, as long as you say what we want you to say. Fucking snowflakes. Badar Khan Suri, an Indian citizen studying and teaching at Georgetown University on a J-1 visa, detained by ICE on March 17th. Approached by masked men outside his home after an iftar gathering. I don't know what that is. I'm assuming some kind of cultural thing or a religious thing. But they just walk up on the street. I mean, why not just put on brown shirts and jackboots and be fucking done with it? I mean, seriously. And why? Why did we get this guy? Let's see here. The dean of Georgetown School says, as far as he knew, he's a doctor, by the way, was not engaged in any illegal activity, nor posed a threat to the security of our campus. He was been focused on completing his research. I mean, what the crap? Seeking to deport Suri under a rarely used provision of the Immigration and Nationality Act that gives the Secretary of State the authority to deport non-citizens for whom the Secretary has reasonable ground to believe their presence or activities in the U.S. would have potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences. Like what? What? You know, obviously, the people who wrote the Constitution were not perfect. They were men, just like you and me. I'm sorry, ladies. They were all men, because that's what it was. And I want to point out that these guys want to take us back to that, where it was and is only the men doing it. Ever seen The Handmaid's Tale? Something like that. That's what they want. You should have to give a reason. A reason beyond they pose a serious threat before we go revoking people's innate human rights. A threat because you're missing the end of the sentence. You are committing a grammatical sin, and you're not completing your sentence. Why? The Merovingian knew the power of why. Why is what separates us from them, you from me. Why is the only thing that can give us power, and without it we are powerless. Why? You should have to say why. And guess what? This is the American legal system. We love to sue people over everything and anything. And yes, a lot of times it is goddamn inconvenient. But it also allows us time to figure out the truth of things. I don't know how often that really works out, but that's the idea. And for someone in the executive branch to just be able to just willy-nilly this and just say, well, we think that they are a threat to national security, and so we need to get them the hell out of Dodge. I just don't agree with that. I mean, everyone deserves the modicum of due process. Maybe you're wrong. Maybe you got bad intel. You know? Happens all the time. Apparently these days, people just throw it out there on Signal and Gmail. You probably know something about that, don't you, Marco Rubio? And his wife is a U.S. citizen. Called him a foreign exchange student at Georgetown University, according to someone at Homeland Security, who was actively spreading Hamas propaganda and promoting anti-Semitism on social media. That he had close connections to a known or suspected terrorist who was a senior advisor to Hamas. I just don't believe it. You know? And this is the kind, I mean, you just randomly throw that out there. You've got one side that says he doesn't do any crap like this. You got another that says apparently he is, you know, one stone's throw away to throwing on AK-47 and screaming jihad. And we're just supposed to go with the side that says we can deport him because we want to. We're just supposed to do that. Because why? Prove it! Prove this crap. Mamadou Tal. I'm sorry if I screwed that name up. A graduate student and dual UK and Gambian citizen chose to leave the US on March 31st after his student visa was revoked on March 14th, and he faced the threat of detainment and deportation. He participated in pro-Palestinian protests last year, causing him to be suspended twice and at risk of losing his student visa. He also faced backlash after posting on X, colonized peoples have the right to resist by any means necessary. I can say clearly, categorically, I abhor the killing of all civilians no matter where they are and who does it. I love life. I don't love death. That's what I am as a human being. Why is it the association? Because I'm a Muslim and a black person, I have to condemn a prescribed terrorist organization before having an opinion on genocide. Which just goes back to what I was saying. I mean, two things can be true at once. I mean, the Israeli people lived for generations moving from and living in one society or another, not really having a true nation of their own for such a long time. And the Palestinian people are not that dissimilar. Their own history has a lot of that as well, of having to move from one part of their country of the Middle East to another, and having to live in other societies because they never could get their own area and their own land. if you peel back the layers of those onions, it does not take long to see that these people have a strong commonality in their history. Yeah, one of them practices Judaism and the other one practices Islam. Who cares anymore? I mean, I know a lot of people cling to that. But we can't. They don't believe the right way. Hallelujah. We got to believe. I call it horse shit at this point. I really do. I mean, what is their beliefs and the religions of these hard kind of fanatical belief in? What has it gotten them? It's got them a lot of dead bodies, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, and it's subjugated a number of them on both sides. I don't see the benefit. All I see is the harm. I mean, yeah, religion and faith, they can be wonderful things. They can give people hope in hard times and comfort in bad times. And they can be causes for celebration. And that stuff's great. But when you use it to separate people and to cause differences and division, it ain't good. It ain't good. And now you have two people. Really, you have, because there was a lot of the Jewish citizens too who didn't want this. They wanted some kind of retaliation, understandable. They didn't want this. They didn't want the entire Gaza Strip laid to waste. Citizens be damned, innocents, whatever. They didn't want that. But now the government sure did. Netanyahu wanted it. And Hamas wanted it. They wanted the Israelis to come in after them. It's the government. It's the leaders of these groups, of these regimes. That's the problem. It's not the people. It doesn't matter what you believe. It doesn't matter if you believe in Islam. It doesn't matter if you believe in Judaism, Protestantism, Catholicism, Confucianism, Great Spaghetti God in the Sky, Lord Tetanus, whatever. It doesn't matter. What matters is how you treat people as people. Understanding that, yes, not everyone is going to believe everything exactly how you think it should be. You know what? As long as we're not hurting each other and as long as we're being helpful, it doesn't matter. Go pray in your mosque. Go to your mass. Take a walk outside if that's what does it for you spiritually. Enjoy the fresh air and the green leaves. The feeling of sand between your toes. Whatever. But destroying people's lives over this stuff like this, it's just cruel. It's cruel, and it is authoritarian, and it's ugly. It's ugly. Cordia, sorry again, overstayed her student visa for lack of attendance, was among those arrested in 2024 for her involvement in campus protests. Currently being held in Texas as of March 31st. And then, of course, Mahmoud Khalil. Arrested at his home by ICE agents. Again, involved in protests for the attacks on Gaza. Ranjani Srinivasan came to the U.S. from India as a Fulbright recipient in 2016. I'm assuming, it sounds like something good. Became a PhD candidate at Columbia in 2020. Began teaching as an adjunct professor at New York University last fall. Was in the 5th year of her doctoral degree at Columbia University's Department of Urban Planning when ICE agents knocked at her door on March 7th. That's when she learned her student visa had been revoked by the State Department via an email, March 5th. Wow. This stuff's just crazy. Moving on. I've got a lot to talk about. The Trump tariffs, the largest tax increase in decades to the American consumer. Do not believe the lies. Your prices for the things you buy every day are about to go up if they are not going up for you already. Tariffs across the board today, 10% across the board to everybody for anything coming in. Those will be passed down to the consumer. You and I will pay more for our groceries, for our toilet paper, for our linens, for everything. Because the vast majority of stuff that we buy is made somewhere else. I am not sitting here defending it. I honestly happen to believe that we should make more things in this country. But, again, this is not the way to do it. Because all you're going to do is cause a lot of pain to a lot of people who already can't afford the majority of crap because everything is already too expensive. But in between the revenue that will come from all these tariffs from the American people, not from China, not from anywhere else, from you and me, the billions of dollars of revenue that will come in, combined with the billions of dollars of cuts they want to dram through and take out of Social Security and Medicaid and Medicare, they think that will be enough to try and offset, to try and say they're offsetting their budget proposal and ram through a bunch of tax breaks and cause a deficit. It's supposed to add like 12, I think the latest figure I heard was $12 trillion over the next 10 years. I mean, how in the world can you tell me you are so worried about the federal deficit that you're okay with them just adding $12 trillion more dollars to it over the next 10 years or so? I mean, what a joke. And these guys are just going to the bank with it. I mean, it's unbelievable. Of course, I'm sure you've all heard about the Venezuelan gangs rounding people, about ICE agents rounding up a bunch of people and saying that they're all members of a Venezuelan gang and they all just got shipped out. to an El Salvador prison, because that's what we do now. We don't detain people in America. We ship them out and spend a whole lot more money on that than it would cost to just detain them here until we could, actually deport them. But no, we didn't deport them. We sent them, we kidnapped them and sent them to a max security prison in another country that apparently is supposed to be one of the worst places on earth. And on top of all of the people who apparently don't have any ties to this gang affiliation, there is another one I heard about today who had went through the legal procedures for asylum years ago, like 5 or 6 years ago, had an order from a federal asylum judge that said that this person cannot be deported because most likely he will be tortured and everything else and probably killed. Guy had been here for years, had a wife, has a son. But the Trump administration has actually said that they made a mistake when they rounded him up. It was an administrative error. He wasn't supposed to be, but he did, and he's there. But they're like, sorry, since he's there, we really can't go after him. We can't do anything about that. So tough. But I'm sure he won't be tortured or anything. I'm sure he'll be fine. I mean, we're not going to talk about the fact that there's a court order that says he's not supposed to be there. Or the fact that since he is here and has successfully been given asylum, that he's actually supposed to have the same rights as everyone else under the Constitution. And we violated every one of those, and also violated the rights of his wife, who is a U.S. citizen, and his son, who is a U.S. citizen, to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness with their father and husband. Yeah, we're not going to talk about that. So, we're good. See ya. I mean, that's their... that's the way they go about everything. They break it. They say it can't work, or then they say it can't be done, and then they take all the money they can out of it, and then they just leave it to rot or get thrown in a trash can. I mean, that's I don't understand. And, getting back to the Muskrats, to the Muskrat pack. Did you know that they apparently terminated the leases on several dozen mine safety facilities and contracts throughout the country? A third of which apparently are in Kentucky, because even though coal has become not as valuable for energy production, it still employs quite a few people, and they still do have operations going on. But the Muskrat regime has decided to close a number of their offices and employees and fire them. Offices in Prestonsburg, Hazard, Barberville, and Harlan, just to name a few. Because, we don't need that anymore. We don't need to worry about mine safety regulations or anything like that. Because the mine companies have a long history of really looking out and taking care of their employees, making sure their safety is good, making sure that they don't work too hard or too tired, making sure they're adequately paid. I'm sorry. I was trying to get through that with a straight face. Yeah. but that's waste, fraud, and abuse, apparently. Mine safety. And getting back to, someone who this affects in our little neck of the woods specifically, would be our representative, old Hal Rogers, who on a statement he put out on March 4th, 2025, talking about Timu Hitler's regime and all the Muskrat stuff and trying to ferret out waste, fraud, and abuse and everything. He talks about how he stands with them. He's right beside them. He thinks that they have a strong, and good mandate for leadership and everything else like that. And then he also says he has no intention of gutting Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security. I bet. We're just going to take care of the waste, fraud, and abuse, right? Yeah. I mean, by the numbers I'm seeing, you must think at least a good third or fourth of it is just waste and fraud. And then he brings up old Eric C. Kahn, which people in Kentucky should remember, for his Social Security fraud back in the day, which was substantial. The man did get away with a lot of fraud for a long time. No doubt. No question of that. But when he was found out, and when he was charged, and when he was convicted and arrested, it didn't happen because half the government was slashed and axed. It didn't happen because some billionaire thought he could come in and just fix everything within a few days and fire all the attorney generals and all the investigative generals and just slash entire organizations and fire half the people and all of them, sell off the buildings. No, it didn't take all that, because this substantial waste, fraud, and abuse of the Social Security Administration was found by the Obama administration. That's right, folks. They cut out a huge thing of waste, fraud, and abuse, and they didn't have to fire a bunch of veterans to do it. Maybe this administration ain't going about it the right way. But there was also a little tidbit in here that I found very interesting, which was when during this so-called State of the Union address that Timu Hitler gave, Rogers said that he invited two people, his pastor, whatever, and a friend of his named Joe Kraft, who I don't know. I know nothing about Joe Kraft. I haven't taken the time to look anything up about him. I don't know. I'm just going by what I'm reading here on old Rogers' little press release he put out, which said that he has been a leader in coal, oil, and gas industries. Specifically, I'm looking at the word coal. And then I'm looking at all the mine safety operations that have been canceled by this administration and the Muskrats. And then I'm thinking, with fewer regulations, fewer safety things to have to worry about, it'd be a lot easier to save some money and maybe skirt some of that stuff. Maybe pocket a little bit more. Maybe I'm crazy, and but I'm just asking questions. That's a legit thing, right? We can ask questions. It seems interesting to me. Seems like possibly an interesting way to maybe help your friend out a little bit too. if he's helping support the administration that's cutting out all these extra regulations that are keeping you from not pocketing a little bit more green, maybe just kind of shove a little bit over there to your friend too and say thanks for your help. Just asking questions. Is that happening? I don't know. Just asking. Spartans, there's a lot of crap going on in the world. I mean, we're only in day what? It's not even been 100 days yet. Is this day 70 of the Trump regime at this point? I've lost track. It feels like months to me, but it's only been weeks. I think some people are starting to wake up. I saw something on CNN talking to some people who had voted for Trump in West Virginia, people who had been fired that had worked for federal agencies up there, and they've been let go because of all the Muskrat stuff. And now they're like, well, I just didn't think this would happen. The unfortunate thing about a lot of people is that they don't see the danger until it has affected them specifically. Which actually reminds me of a quote from a German pastor, a little thing he wrote after World War II, after he'd been held in concentration camps for a number of years. Some of you probably have heard it, but I'm gonna read it real quick. It's very short, and I'm sure I'm getting the name wrong, but it's attributed to a German pastor named Martin Niemöller. It goes, "First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out, because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me." Folks, to anybody who knows me, obviously a white guy, born in Eastern Kentucky. I'm not Jewish. I grew up in a Southern Baptist-like church. It was non-denominational, but that's basically what it was. It was an evangelical church. I didn't have a strong didn't have any family members really strongly or that lived a LGBTQ plus lifestyle or anything. Growing up, I didn't have any friends of any color. My schools were predominantly white. We might have had one or two, maybe three at the most in high school. It's a very white community. And it would be easy to not worry about a lot of people that are going through hardships right now, because it seems like this administration, if you're white and you're from a Christian background, and as long as you keep your mouth shut, they're not going to bother you. So it'd be easy to do it. But I'm not built that way. I don't subscribe to that. And I don't go to church actively anymore. I honestly have a lot of problems with a lot of things in the Bible over time as I've studied it on my own and I've really dug into it. That's a conversations for another day, but there's still a lot of things I liked about Jesus, that I like about the sermons, that I like about the parables and the teachings and the Beatitudes. And he wasn't quiet. He wasn't quiet about the suffering of the poor and the sick and the outcast. He wasn't quiet about it. He didn't ride into town and look the other way when the leper was reaching for him. He didn't look away when the people were hungry. He didn't turn his back on the harlot or the Samaritan or the Gentile. He could have. Would have been easy to just talk to the Pharisees and preach to the Jews about how the Lord was going to come back and save them all from the Romans, and would have been simple, would have been easier. But that wasn't the message. The message was love thy neighbor. The message was, what you have done to the least among you, you have also done to me. The message was love, faith, and hope. And the greatest of these was love. You know, I can't sit here and say that I understand the emotional or the psychological workings of someone who feels attracted to the same sex, or someone who doesn't feel like their body that they were born into represents who they feel like they are on the inside. I have not had experience with that. So I can't sit here and say that I completely understand it. But just because I cannot personally understand it doesn't mean that I believe it is wrong or an affront to nature or some stupid crap like that. There's lots of things in this world I don't understand. It doesn't make it evil. It just makes it different. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with being a little different. Some people like different shows. Some people like different music. Some girls like other girls. Some guys like other guys. Some girls feel more like guys. Some guys feel more like girls. Some people don't feel like either. They feel like something in between that they have a hard time expressing themselves. And that's okay. What's wrong with that? You've got this moral zealots that just freak out at the first sign of anything that seems weird, even a little bit weird or strange to them, or just a little bit different. And then they cry and scream about how it's an affront to God and nature and everything else. You don't know what God is. You don't know what nature is, for that matter. There are animals in nature that can change their sex. There are animals in nature that don't need sex. They can just reproduce on their own. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't change anything. Not to mention the fact that in the grand scheme, there's so few of them. You're bullying a population of people that will never be, even if you think of them as a threat, there'll never be enough of them to be a threat. Whatever. I'm not entirely sure how I got on this subject. I'm kind of ranting at this point. I guess the point I'm trying to get to is this is supposed to be America. It's supposed to be a melting pot. It's supposed to be a place full of different ideas. You're supposed to have the freedom to talk about these ideas. You're supposed to have the freedom to express these ideas, and to as long as we're all going by the law and we're not breaking into each other's homes, we're not hurting each other, we're not stealing crap and things like that, we're supposed to be able to live how we feel like we want to live. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Free speech. Religious freedom. That's the stuff that we should be aspiring to. We should be helping people to be able to live to that potential. Having a bunch of billionaires, having half the wealth of the country concentrated in the hands of a couple thousand people, that's not okay. That's not healthy. That doesn't help the majority of the population live a fulfilling life with happiness and liberty. It puts them in poverty. It makes them reliant on the state because they can't even find jobs that pay enough so they could even start to live a life of happiness or liberty, or to feel fulfilled. There's lots of things that need to be changed. Sometimes you can only do one thing at a time. But I've ranted on this for too long at this point. Anyway, I hope some of this information finds you all well, and hope some of it gives you some hope. You know, like I said, the state Supreme Court race went for someone who actually seems to believe in the rule of law. The special elections in Florida, the Republicans won the seats, but Democrats cut their margins in half. That's good. I'm not completely reliant on the Democrats to save us or anything, but in the grand scheme of things, right now, definitely a lot better choice than what we got right now. But anyway, I think I'm done for tonight, Spartans. Again, I would love for someone to run against Hal Rogers and kick his butt out of office. At this point, I think he's nothing more than another rich guy. Another rich guy who has rich buddies, who is just going to roll over and vote however Trump and them want him to vote, because it's easy. It's easy to do it. You know, you get paid, you get your money. You don't do any town halls. I call the office, I leave messages. I never get a response. You know, I really want him out. I do. I more and more that's becoming like my goal. Of course, I'd love to see Rand Paul and Mitch McConnell get out too, and for some people who are not Republicans to replace them. But I do. I mean, Hal has been in there way too long. And I don't know what he's done for Eastern Kentucky. Maybe he did something back in the day. But anymore, all I see is another MAGA stooge wanting to pull a check. That's all I see. Prove me wrong. I'd love to hear about it. Anyway, Spartans, good luck out there. Stay strong, be safe, try and enjoy life a little. For now, I'm out.